You are standing over a kill you did not make. A lion has just been driven off its carcass by your ancestors, shouting, throwing stones, waving fire. The meat is right there, fresh, warm, and somewhere in your body, a warning is already firing. Not hunger, caution. For nearly all of human history, this moment repeated itself again and again. Early humans were scavengers as much as hunters, and predator kills were sometimes the easiest meal available. But something strange kept happening. The animals that killed other animals for a living were, again and again, the ones humans learned to avoid eating. Why would that be? Meat is meat. Calories are calories. So why does something in you still recoil at the thought of eating a lion, a wolf, an eagle, when a cow or a deer barely registers as unusual? The answer isn't squeamishness. It's chemistry, biology, and millions of years of trial and error, written into instincts you never had to learn on purpose. Start with the most basic explanation, the one biologists call the 10% rule. Energy is lost at every step of a food chain. A plant captures sunlight and stores maybe 1% of that energy in its tissue. A deer eats the plant and keeps roughly 10% of what it consumed. A wolf eats the deer and keeps another 10% of that. By the time you reach a predator like a lion or a wolf, the animal's body has already burned through most of the energy it ever contained, just staying alive, hunting, running, healing from fights. This means predator meat is, pound for pound, a worse caloric deal than herbivore meat. Less fat, leaner muscle, fewer calories per bite. For a species like early humans constantly on the edge of starvation, that math mattered. Every hour spent hunting or scavenging had to justify itself in energy returned. A predator carcass simply paid less. But energy alone doesn't explain the deeper aversion. For that, you need to look at what predators carry inside them. In 1856, the German pathologist Rudolf Virchow was the first to formally document a disease called trichinosis, caused by a parasitic worm that lives in the muscle tissue of carnivorous and omnivorous animals. Predators that eat other animals accumulate these parasites over a lifetime of meals. Each infected prey item adds another layer. By the time a predator is caught and eaten itself, its meat can carry a heavier parasite load than almost anything else in the ecosystem. This is a principle ecologists call biomagnification, though it applies to more than just heavy metals in polluted oceans. Toxins, parasites, and pathogens don't disappear as they move up a food chain. They concentrate. A deer might carry a small parasite burden from the plants it eats. A wolf that has spent years eating deer, rabbits, and rodents carries the accumulated burden of everything it has ever consumed. Herbivores, by contrast, mostly encounter what lives on plants. Predators encounter what lives inside other animals. And what lives inside other animals is, evolutionarily speaking, built specifically to survive digestion and keep spreading. Picture a small group of early humans camped near a fresh carcass. It is a lion's kill, abandoned mid-meal after the pride was chased off by fire and noise. Someone eyes the meat. It smells fine. It looks no different from any other kill. But an older member of the group, someone who has seen this before, shakes their head and steers the group away, toward the grass-eating antelope carcass instead, even though it means walking farther. They could not have explained trichinosis. They didn't know what a parasite was in any scientific sense. But somewhere along the way, generations of humans who avoided predator meat got sick less often, buried fewer children, and passed down both their genes and their caution. The ones who didn't avoid it sometimes paid for a shortcut meal with weeks of debilitating illness, or worse. This is where the story takes its counterintuitive turn. You might assume that predators, being strong and dangerous, would be the most prized meat, a trophy, a symbol of dominance transferred by eating the animal that once threatened you. Many cultures did treat predator meat this way symbolically, but biologically, the opposite was often true. The most dangerous animal on the savannah was frequently the worst thing you could put in your body. There's a second layer to this too, one tied to a phenomenon called predator taint. Carnivore meat often carries strong-smelling compounds and higher concentrations of certain fatty acids that give it a distinctly different taste and odor compared to herbivore meat, often described as gamey, musky, or simply unpleasant to a palate shaped by generations of eating grass-fed animals. Human taste preferences are not arbitrary. They are, in large part, evolved warning systems, and a strong aversion to the smell of carnivore fat may have kept people away from meat that statistically carried more risk. Modern researchers studying isolated hunter-gatherer societies, including work compiled by anthropologists studying groups like the Hadza of Tanzania, have found that predator species are consistently underrepresented in traditional diets compared to their actual abundance in the local ecosystem. It isn't that lions, hyenas, and wild dogs were unavailable. It's that they were avoided deliberately as a matter of long-standing practice passed down through observation rather than written rule. Here's the twist that changes how you should think about your own instincts today. You didn't inherit a taste preference. You inherited a filtering system built across an almost unimaginable number of individual choices, each one small, each one reinforced by consequence. Eat this, feel fine. Eat that, get sick. Repeated across millions of meals over hundreds of thousands of years until the aversion stopped being a decision and became something closer to disgust, automatic and immediate. This same logic still shapes your plate today, whether you have ever thought about it or not. Walk into any grocery store and look at what fills the meat section. Cattle, chickens, pigs, sheep, fish, mostly the smaller, plant and plankton-eating varieties. Apex predators like lions, wolves, eagles, and large sharks are essentially absent from global food culture, not because they're rare, and not because there are laws against it in most places, but because almost nobody wants to eat them. The aversion your ancestors developed through hard experience is still running quietly in the background of every dinner you've ever eaten, which brings you back to that abandoned lion kill on the open plain. What looked like a decision about hunger was never really about hunger at all. It was a filter, refined across hundreds of thousands of years, built from every ancestor who got sick and every ancestor who didn't, silently protecting you from a mistake you would never consciously understand the reason for. You were never taught to avoid predator meat. You inherited the instinct to.